everything we want more of in our lives. The problem is that we end up here. Instead of having an open heart, we end up with a closed heart. We end up with a protected heart for a lot of different reasons. Some of them are environmental. Let me tell you this for sure. The greatest casualty of trauma is vulnerability. The worst thing we lose in trauma is vulnerability. And let's be very clear about what constitutes trauma. Racism is trauma. Poverty is trauma. Classism, trauma. Homophobia, heterosexism, trauma. And so the biggest casualty of that is I can't be vulnerable. Well, when vulnerability, the ability to really be who we are, becomes a realm of only the privileged, we have lost our capacity to create a school, a home, and a country that we love. Period. Period. So there are those of us who will fight the big fight on the outside, but in no way can we give up the fight on the inside. You can make your classroom, and to some degree, if you have a collective group of brave, badass people, a whole school, but certainly in a classroom, you can, and I have seen it done many times, you can create a culture of courage within a classroom that can be the only space a child has, or an adult, even in a college classroom. I only teach graduate level, MSW, PhD, that's it. You can create a space in that classroom if you're willing to be excruciatingly uncomfortable and vulnerable. That may be the only space that student has to take the armor off his or her heart. But the one thing that will kill it faster than anything else, the one betrayal of vulnerability, is shame. That cannot happen in that classroom. And here's what you need to know before we start talking about shame. 85% of the men and women I have interviewed over the last 15 years can remember a shaming incident at school that was so devastating, it forever changed how they thought of themselves as learners. So let's do this. Raise your hand if you're in here and you can think about something that happened to you in school that changed how you thought of yourself. Right, because here's the other statistic. Over 90% of the people, the men and women we've interviewed, can remember a specific teacher, coach, or administrator who made them believe in their self-worth when no one else did. How many of you remember that teacher or that coach or that administrator? So what does that mean? So the question teachers always say, well, does that mean like they were doing more good or harm or what's happening? It doesn't, what it means, and let me tell you, you can be the same person. What it means is do not ever question the power you have with the people you teach. Learning is inherently vulnerable, and it's like you've got a classroom full of turtles without shells. And the minute they put the shell back on, they're protected from their peers or from the teacher or from whomever, but no learning can come in because no vulnerability, no learning. So we have to really find a way to develop shame-resilient classrooms, not shame-free. Look, here's what we know, 50 years of data. The only people who don't experience shame are people who have no capacity for empathy or connection.